Hi, Dr. Waggy here with the take two of the What Makes a Good Hypothesis or Hypothesis tutorial video. I want to talk to you a little bit about what makes a hypothesis both operationalized and feasible. Um, but first, I want to spend a few minutes on just what makes a good hypothesis because, your book covers this, but you may get some additional inspiration just from hearing some of this stuff. So there are 5 things that I would say makes a good hypothesis, and the first one would be, well, it's stated in a declarative form. It's not a question; it's a statement you're making, because you can test statements. So if you make some kind of a statement, you can then falsify it. If I make the statement, um, people who have high levels of job satisfaction will have higher levels of marital satisfaction as well, then that's a statement I can test. But a question you can't test. Like, I wonder if, or will people who have higher levels of job satisfaction also have higher levels of marital satisfaction? So it's important to state things in a sentence. It's also important that your hypothesis posits some kind of relationship between two variables. Like, in my example, I was positing a relationship between uh, job satisfaction and marital satisfaction. So, job satisfaction in this case would probably be the independent variable, and marital satisfaction would be the dependent variable, because I'm suggesting that one thing would influence the other. Although, in this case, it would be a correlational study and not an experiment, right? Because we're just positing that there's a relationship, not that it's directional. So we couldn't really say that one was the independent variable and one was the dependent variable, but we're kind of suggesting that one is, and that's a little bit of a gray area. Um, uh, okay, and then the third requirement for a good hypothesis is that it will reflect the current theory or the current literature. Um, you don't want something that would be outdated. You don't want something that would be unimportant. So you want something um, that reflects current thinking, and current would be, last 5 or 10 years, depending on what your field is. In cognitive psych, current is within the last 3 years. In neuroscience, it's probably within the last year. Um, so, one good way to make sure your hypothesis reflects the current theory or literature is to take inspiration for formulating your hypothesis from journals. So you can go and look through databases or look through the physical journals that are in the library and see and read a couple papers that have been published in the last couple of years, and take some inspiration from there when you're formulating your hypothesis. Okay? Your hypothesis should be brief and to the point. No need for anything flowery or special, or no need for a lot of, elaboration. And it also needs to be testable. That's why some things in psychology have been criticized for being like non-scientific, is because they're not testable. So it's not, in Freud's case, it wasn't scientific to postulate, or to theorize on the content of dreams, because you couldn't test the content of dreams, or you couldn't test some of the developmental theories that he had. So, really the only hypothesis that we want for this class is something that you can test. So, and that brings me to what I'm making this video about, which is operationalization and feasibility. Feasibility means, is this something you can do at Avila? If you have if you're a novice researcher, you haven't graduated yet, so if you have a research interest in something that's a really sensitive area, we're not really going to be able to do it at Avila, because you need to have some experience with research, and you need to be a licensed professional in order to, say, like, give people surveys on traumas that they've experienced, or anything like that, anything that could drag up any negative feelings. It's just answering a survey or a questionnaire about eating disorders or trauma, or something sensitive about yourself, can drag up a lot of negative kinds of things. So first of all, you want to stay away from stuff like that. You want to stay away from stuff that's really sensitive. You want to minimize risk in every way possible, and risk could include emotional or mental risk. And also, there are things at Avalo that we just can't do, like we can't do an fMRI study because we don't have an fMRI machine, and we can't do an eye tracking study because we don't have an eye tracking machine. So, you want to make sure you do something that you have the equipment for. Now, you can do a lot of studies using programs, computer programs that are online. Like one of my students in my lab recently found a free IAT test online that she can program to do kind of what she wants. And IAT is implicit associations test. Or there are reaction time measures online. If you go around and you kind of look for those. Or there are like Stroop tasks that are all over the place online. So if you want to load that up onto a laptop, you can bring that in and you can have people working on those just fine. You can give out surveys or questionnaires. There are lots of things that you can do that don't require a lot of equipment. So you have to kind of know where to look. So, and that's something that I can help you with too. If you're struggling, make sure you let me know early because your hypothesis is due on the 10th. And I've heard from a couple of you and I've helped a couple of you formulate your hypotheses already, and it's worked out pretty well. Okay, so that's feasibility. The other thing you have to keep in mind is operationalization. And operationalization is the degree to which you translate your concepts into variables. So within your hypothesis, you'll have these concepts that are called constructs. This is really important. So a construct is something that you can't directly measure. Well, what's an example of something you can't directly measure? Well, what about job satisfaction? We don't have a job satisfaction monitor that we can put in somebody's mouth, or we don't have like a measuring stick we can't directly measure, sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze for a second. You can't directly measure job satisfaction, but what you can do is give somebody a job satisfaction questionnaire. So if I were to operationalize my earlier hypothesis, well, there will be a positive relationship between marital satisfaction or job satisfaction and marital satisfaction. Then to operationalize that, I would say there is a positive relationship between people's scores on the Minnesota Job Satisfaction Questionnaire and the marital adjustment test. Those are actual things that you can measure. You can measure scores. You can't directly measure marital satisfaction. Like, here's how maritally satisfied are you? It's a construct. Like another construct would be memory. Can you look at somebody and see their memory? Not really. You have to find different ways to operationalize it. It's the same thing with depression and anxiety. And so you want to make sure with operationalization that you are describing exactly what you are measuring. What are you measuring? What are your independent and dependent variables specifically? And sometimes that's kind of tricky. Usually it's pretty straightforward, but every once in a while it's kind of tricky. So, just keep in mind that a good operationalization will allow somebody to go out and test your hypothesis in the same way you've tested it. So if I were to say, people who learn in a cooler room will have better memory than people who learn in a warm room. Well, what's cool? What's warm? What's memory? What are they doing? Short-term memory tasks? Are they doing long-term memory tasks? Are they doing word recall? Are they doing recognition? Are they doing, there are a lot of different things that you can do there. So, and the results that you get when you test your hypothesis are largely a function of how you test your hypothesis, which is why we have this class on research design. There are a lot of different designs you can use to test things, and a lot of different ways you can test things, but, the results you'll get are largely a function of, how you test your hypothesis. So, okay, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to help you with hypothesis. I'll be around all weekend, so I'm available to talk by phone if you need. I'm also around on Monday. I have some meetings and stuff, but I might be able to call you. It's just the sooner the better if you're having any problems. All right.